we ask you to meet their needs, heal their bodies, if it's spiritual, if it's physical, emotional, financial, whatever the need is, Father, we ask you to meet that for them. Father, as we study your word, help us to understand, and also the main thing is apply your word to our everyday lives. We ask all this in the name of your Son, Jesus. Amen. All right, we were finishing up chapter 7 of Genesis. And remember, we said right there towards the end, it was about 16, that the Lord shut Noah in. And he shut him in, and it basically did two things. Number one, it's a sign of salvation. He's safe. And it's also a sign of judgment, because when he shut Noah in, the rest of the world is shut out. And so that is a sign of judgment. And I remember last week, I think Richard was making a comment about this being also, the flood being a form of baptism. And that was a good point. We didn't really discuss that. I actually forgot to do it. And I'm glad you brought it up, because when you think about that, when everything is washed clean, everything is fresh and new, it's like baptism, isn't it? We accept Christ. We're baptized, we go down, we're dirty, we come back up, we're clean, everything's fresh and new. And so he made a good point, we just didn't get into that. But the world is clean and at rest at this point. Okay, so we're going to go to chapter 8. But God remembered Noah. He didn't forget Noah, it makes the comment, God remembered Noah and all the wild animals and the livestock that were with him in the ark, and he sent a wind over the earth, and the waters receded. So if you've studied this before, about how long were they in the ark? I don't think there's a definitive answer, but kind of how long? That long, huh? Okay. Anybody? 2 weeks. 150's about half of it, yeah, that they were actually in the ark, because once the water receded, then they had to stay for a while too, didn't they? Most commentaries say a little over a year. Some say 360 or 371, 377, somewhere in there. They're in the ark for a year. That's a long time. And not just to be there with a bunch of animals that you got to take care of, but a year, that's just a long time. Yeah. So that shows Noah's patience and depending on God, knowing that you got to know, he was sending out notices and he wasn't getting the answer back, and so you got to know he wants out. But he's patient, and he waited on God's timing. So somewhere in the neighborhood of a year that before they actually got out of the ark. And it says, now the springs of the deep and the floodgates of the heavens had been closed. We're on 8:2. And the rain stopped falling from the sky, and the waters receded steadily from the earth. And at the end of 150 days, the water had gone down, and the 17th day, that might have been where you found that 150 days, yeah. Came and rested on the mountains of Ararat. And the waters continued to recede until the 10th month, and then on the first day of the 10th month, the tops of the mountains became visible. So we see it's just in a progression that they're going to be able to leave the ark. So let's scroll down a little bit, because it's a play-by-play, and it's pretty hard to discuss a play-by-play. On the 17th day, they did this. On the 18th day, and so we're going to bypass some of that, okay? Let's get down to about 13. It said, by the first day of the first month of Noah's 601st year, he entered when? It was 600. And so it's at the end of 601. So that kind of gives us an idea. It's in the neighborhood of a year. The water had dried up from the earth, and Noah then removed the covering from the ark and saw that the surface of the ground was dry. By the 27th day of the second month, the earth was completely dry. And then God said to Noah, Come out of the ark, you and your wife and your sons and their wives. Bring out every kind of living creature that's with you, all of them, birds, animals that are along the ground, so they can multiply on the earth and be fruitful and increase in number on it. So Noah came out with his sons and wives, his sons' wives, all the animals and all the creatures that moving along the ground and all the birds that moving on the earth came out of the ark, one kind after another. Remember we talked earlier about there was 2 of every kind of animal, then there was 7 of some, and those were the clean animals. And what did we use them for? What were they going to be used for? Most people said for sacrifice. And here we go. Then Noah built an altar to the Lord. And taking some of all the clean animals and clean birds, he sacrificed burnt offerings on it. The Lord smelled the pleasing aroma. Let's just stop right there. The Lord smelled a pleasing aroma. What was he smelling? Obedience. Yes, obedience. Anything else? I mean, we could make a big joke about it, say he was smelling a lot of things because they'd been in there for a year, but let's get past all of that. He was smelling obedience from Noah. Noah did everything that God commanded him. Also, what else? It was obedience, and then what? What came after the flood? We just talked about it a little bit ago. The world was clean. It was pure. There was, at this point, there's no sin. It had the sin nature, but there's no record of sin. The ungodly are gone. And the 8 that are considered godly are coming out of the ark, and they gave a sacrifice to the Lord. It smelled good. And they had a pleasing aroma with them. Okay. The Lord smelled the pleasing aroma and said in his heart, "Never again will I curse the ground because of man." Even though, and so he's even qualifying there. He says, even though every inclination of his heart is evil from childhood. So he's going to remove the curse, and he's not going to destroy the land by water again. And he says, even though everybody is sinful, even from the day of birth, I'm going to do that anyway. That's the kind of God we serve. He's gracious, he's merciful, he's forgiving, and even knowing that we're going to do that, he does it. He says, as long as the earth endures, seed time and harvest, cold and heat, summer and winter, day and night will never cease. So what's he promising here? He's promising that he won't destroy man in water. What is he saying here? We got all the seasons. So and they're going to continue until Christ returns again, until the end, till it's all over, that the seasons will not go away and man will not be destroyed by water. Okay. Chapter 9. This one gets pretty good. Then God blessed Noah and his sons and said to them, "Be fruitful and increase in the number and fill the earth. The fear and dread of you will fall upon all the beasts of the earth and all the birds of the air and upon the creatures that move along the ground and upon all the fish of the sea. They are given into your hands. Everything that lives and moves will be food for you. Just as I gave you the green plants, now I give you everything." What did they get here now? Meat. They get meat. They haven't had meat before this. Yeah, and so all these people, even Casey coming in right here, he's in the cattle business. He'll love this scripture. I mean, and then they could eat meat. They've been eating greens all this time, and now they can eat meat. You're happy about that, aren't you? Yeah, yeah. Okay, it's a new start, No sin, just like what? Adam and Eve. It's kind of a fresh start. It's almost like a new Adam and Eve. Jesus is called the second Adam, but this is like the second Adam in the physical realm because they're getting a new start, no sin. But you must not eat meat that has its lifeblood in it. We still don't want to do that, do we? So, and there's a reason for that. The life is in the blood. Jesus died. What did he give? Gave his blood. So the life is in the blood. You don't eat the blood. You drain it. He said, and for your lifeblood, I will surely demand an accounting. I will demand an accounting from every animal, from each man. I will demand an accounting for the life of his fellow man. So what's he saying there? Anybody? If you murder somebody, if you take somebody's life, your life is going to be taken. What are they setting up here now? They're setting up government. Hadn't had government before. You think about when Cain killed Abel. What did Abel, God could have taken him out right there, a life for a life, but he didn't do that, did he? There was really no form of government. Here, they're setting up an organization to say it's a life for a life. If you take somebody's life, your life is going to be required of you. And he says, whoever sheds blood of the man, by man shall his blood be shed. For in the image of God has God made man. We're in his image. We are important enough that God cares. And you're not going to take out somebody that is in my image. You don't have that power. I do, not me, God. So you take a man's life, life will be required of you. So there's a government set up, and there was so much wickedness initially that some organization had to be set up. So they couldn't let wickedness go unchecked now. So they're setting up some organization is what they're doing. Not that many people who do it, but they're going to reproduce, and they will have order then. As for you, be fruitful and increase in number, and multiply on the earth and increase upon it. Then God said to Noah and his sons, I now establish my covenant with you and with your descendants after you, and every living creature that was with you, the birds, the livestock, and all the wild animals, and all those that came out of the ark with you, every living creature on earth, I establish my covenant with you. Never again will all life be cut off by the waters of a flood. Never again will there be a flood to destroy the earth. So, how's it going to be destroyed? If it's not water next time, what is it? You want to jump to the New Testament? 2 Peter chapter 3. And this is, he's talking to the church about the hope for Christians and the day of the Lord that's coming at a future time. In verse 3, 2 Peter 3, let's do 3. First of all, you must understand that in the last days, scoffers will come, scoffers and following their own evil desires. They will say, where is this coming he promised? Ever since our fathers died, everything goes on as it has since the beginning of creation, making reference to Adam and Eve. But they deliberately forget that long ago, by God's word, the heavens existed and the earth was formed out of water and by water. By these waters, the wall of the world also deluged and was destroyed. By the same word, the present heavens and earth are reserved for fire, being kept for the day of judgment and destruction of ungodly men. So God's the creator. He's also what? He's the judge. And there's another payday coming. It's not always on Friday. There will be for all these people that have scoffers, that have made fun of Christ and have not served him and don't believe in him, there will be a payday for them. Destruction's going to be by fire. How's all that going to happen? I don't know. Hadn't happened yet, so I don't know. Any comments on that? Okay. And let's see, verse 12. And God said, "This is the sign of the covenant I am making between me and you and every living creature with you, a covenant for all generations to come. I have set my rainbow in the clouds, and it will be a sign of the covenant between me and the earth. Whenever I bring clouds over the earth and the rainbow appears in the clouds, I will remember my covenant between me and you and all living creatures of every kind. Never again will the waters become a flood to destroy all life. Whenever the rainbow appears in the clouds, I will see it and remember the everlasting covenant." He stresses everlasting covenant. Everlasting means everlasting, yes. "Between God and all living creatures of every kind on the earth." Just side point, don't you like a rainbow? You kind of just see a nice rain. You ever seen a double rainbow, a triple? We've seen a double, haven't seen a triple. You have, haven't you? You haven't? You've seen a double? Yeah, we've seen, isn't it just gorgeous to see a double rainbow? It's a double blessing or whatever you want to call it. It's just kind of cool. So God said to Noah, "This is the sign of the covenant I have established between me and all life on the earth. Number 1, no world flood. Number 2, seasons will always come. Number 3, because of the rainbow, God will always keep his promise."
I find it interesting that God is saying that he will remember the covenant instead of man needs to remember the covenant with the rainbow.
Yeah. Interesting. I don't know if you got NIV just like I do. Does another version say anything different? Because God doesn't forget anything. God took nothing and made everything. He doesn't forget anything. And so it's interesting that he would be remembered. And I don't know, it's got to have a different interpretation than, "Oh man, I forgot. I see the rainbow. I'm not going to flood this place anymore." He's not saying that. Comment? Well, I don't have an answer either. It's not a sin to be stupid. It's just real unhandy. You know what I'm saying? I don't have an answer for that. I really don't know. All right, moving right along. The sons of Noah who came out of the ark were Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Ham was the father of Canaan. He makes a point there, because we're going to get to that in just a little bit. These were the 3 sons of Noah. From them came the people that were scattered over the earth. Noah, a man of the soil, proceeded to plant a vineyard. When he drank some of its wine, he became drunk and lay uncovered in his tent. We can have a lot of discussion, or we can pass. I think we're going to discuss this. This is pretty interesting. It really is. When you read about what he curses, there's a lot more to it than just his family. Noah was righteous, faithful, obedient. He was also what? He was human. Yeah. Makes mistakes. We do the same thing? Yeah. Anybody that has not sinned in the last 30 days, raise your hand. Yeah. Are you struggling there, Steve? No. We make mistakes. Yeah. I think of when you start thinking about people sinning, you don't think of Noah. You don't think of Abraham. Abraham, the father of the Jews, and we're going to read about him in a few weeks. He was, up until about the middle of his life, he was a habitual liar. That's how he got out of things, was lying his way through it. And so he finally had to learn through patience, obedience, faith, because he was a pagan, just like Noah was a pagan. And they have to learn this. They didn't all just have it automatically, so they learned by experience. But I think of, whenever I've seen Billy Graham on TV, I don't think of sin, do you? I just, there's some people you don't think sin. You know they got the sin nature, but you just don't think they sin. And I think about it. I read some of his stuff. It was a comment that he made. Billy Graham said in one of his sermons, "I am not a perfect servant. I am a public figure representing Jesus Christ. I'm not perfect. I make mistakes. I sin. I hurt people. They hurt me. I'm a public servant. I represent Jesus. I'm going to do that regardless." So, here we have him here. Drank some of his wine. He became drunk and lay uncovered in his tent. Ham, the father of Canaan, saw his father's nakedness and told his two brothers outside. But Shem and Japheth took the garment and laid it across their shoulder, and then they walked in backwards and covered their father's nakedness. Their faces were turned the other way so they would not see their father's nakedness. And what does that mean? It's not a trick question, but anyway, they respected him, yes. Isn't that, have you ever, we just had to do this recently, one of your elderly parents, and you've had to help them, and sometimes you've got to dress them and undress them. It's not what you want to do. It's got to be done, but you don't. There's something about that respect. It's your mother, it's your father. I don't want to do that. I want to turn my head, you know what I mean? But they need help, so you help. And I think of what you're saying here, out of respect for the family, honor for the family. Don't do what Ham did. Probably made some kind of snide remark, something I'm capable of doing, but I hope I wouldn't do it in this instance, but Charlotte will testify to that. Sometimes you just say some stuff a little out of kilter. And he did, and his brothers didn't follow suit. They did what was right. And they turned their heads. They did the just thing for their father, out of respect for him. Yes, sir?
The thing I like about this story for us, too, is what did Ham do? He didn't take action. What did he do? He ran and told others.
Yeah.
How about us?
Yeah.
Whenever we see something,
Yeah.
instead of zipping our mouths and taking care of business and correcting the action, it's easier to go tell somebody.
Yeah.
Hey, what did I see?
And if you read some commentary, that's a good point. If you read some commentary, it says, why, if Ham was at the level of maturity of his brothers, why didn't he just cover him up, go outside and say, hey, bro, outside, don't, I may not have done it right, but anyway, here's what happened. He didn't do that. Went and made some comment, so the brothers had to take over. And this goes farther than just Canaan. He's not talking about, now Canaan is Ham's son. He's not talking about a curse on Canaan, the grandson. This is the Canaanites, which when Joshua took the baton from Moses and they took the promised land, where's the promised land? It's in Canaan. It's the Canaanites. And so this goes farther than that. There's a curse on Canaan, but it means the generational curse. And that's what he's saying here. It says, when Noah awoke from his wine and found out what his youngest son had done to him, he said, oh, well, let me back up a little bit. There was, let's see, Mary Beth, that comment you made about honor and respect. In Adam and Eve's time, they were naked, right? Before the fall. It didn't mean anything. they were at one with God. But this is after the fall. And so the sin nature is in everybody at this point, and probably sin in their life. And so they're going to make they needed to cover him up. If it would have been in Adam and Eve's time before the fall, they wouldn't have to cover him up. It didn't mean anything at that point. So he says, when he woke up from the wine and found out what his youngest son had done, he said to him, "Cursed be Canaan." And when we start looking at the generations here, that's Ham's son is Canaan, okay? Cursed be Canaan, the lowest of slaves, he will be to his brothers. So you're going to have Shem, Ham, and Japheth, and Canaan is going to serve those two, maybe not in their individual lives, but as the generations expand, Canaanites will serve the Shemites and the Japhethites. However you pronounce that. They will serve them in the future. And that's what Noah was pronouncing on his son and on his grandson. And he also said, "Blessed be the Lord, the God of Shem. May Canaan be the slave of Shem. May God extend the territory of Japheth. May Japheth live in the tents of Shem. And may Canaan be his slave." Do you see the order he's doing here? You got the Shem and Japheth, and then you've got Ham. And Ham is going to serve the other two in the form of their relatives, that when they become families and they become the Canaanites. And now the line of Shem, just so we're getting a little fast forward here, but here's the line of Adam. I'm going to shorten, I don't want to do all the genealogy here, but the shortness of it, the line of Adam, and then there's Seth. You had Cain and Abel, but then Cain slew Abel, and then they had another son, Seth, the godly line of Seth. So you've got Adam, Seth, Noah. After Noah, you've got Shem, because Noah, you have Shem, Ham, and Japheth, the godly line of Shem. From Shem comes Abraham. From Abraham comes who? Jesus. So the line of Adam through Jesus goes through Adam, Seth, Noah, Shem, Abraham, and Jesus. So you can see why Canaan is going to be serving those in the future. It's going to be the Canaanites. You remember all the ites when you read when Joshua was leading the charge, and you had we'll get into that in a little bit. Those are the ones that were living in subjection once Israel took over the Promised Land. And it's right out of the prophetic mouth of Noah that it came. And all because of Ham's disobedience. Boy, this picture gets bigger. Yes?
Really shows how one sin can change so many lives' direction.
Yeah.
And the consequences of it, and you may not think too much of it. I mean, I really didn't think that would be a huge thing, but, it really was.
It's a big deal, yeah. And if Ham, obviously, if he'd have known that, he wouldn't have done that. We never know what the consequences. Well, we know the consequences of sin, but what are the repercussions of it? How far does it go to the family? You see, we're not going to name any names, but you just watching the news, you see some famous person, everything's going right with them. They do one thing wrong, and then that's all everybody remembers. It ruins the whole family. The rest of them are in turmoil because of sin. Okay. So that's the order of things, and I'm not going to go through all the genealogies here but just the ones that are going to apply to what we're studying. Yes, ma'am.
How far was it from Seth to
I will have to look it up. I do not know. I left those. Yeah, I left those out. Yeah.
I can look it up myself. I
Okay.
just thought
Would you do me a big favor and look that up and then let me know? I have no idea. I left out the list is that long, but the ones that are going to apply to what we're doing, especially after we get past 3 or 4 more chapters, we're going to be doing Abraham and Isaac and Jacob, okay, and Joseph. And so when you start, and this is that line, and that's the one I picked. But between there, I don't know.
Well, I just thought it was odd that Seth didn't make it on the ark. So
Yeah.
he had to open passed away.
Yeah. And it's hard to know because here it says after the flood, Noah lived 350 years. He was 601, and so, you know, he lived 950. And so somewhere, if it's close, then, yeah, why wouldn't he have been there? He must have already passed. It's the only thing because he was from the godly line. In chapter 6, when we had talked about, and things were so bad, so wicked, that God said, enough's enough. Right about there is the godly line of Seth was commingling somewhere with the ungodly line of Cain, which we didn't get into that discussion. That's a multifaceted discussion that would take days. And so God just said, it's enough. There's so much wickedness going on with the line of Seth and with the line of Cain. I'm just going to end it all, which he did, and we have that here. So, okay, how much time we got? When they start walking in, is that you quit? Okay. This won't take long on 10. Let's look at the breakdown on, this is the table of nations. This is the account of Shem, Ham, and Japheth, Noah's sons, who themselves had sons after the flood. So the thing starts growing. If you look at the line of, because these are the things you'll remember. If we go through the whole line, I don't even remember it. So, you know, I want to do what's relative to the story. Shem, Ham, and Japheth, everything came from them. Okay, the repopulate the earth came from those three. And so, in the Shem's descendants were called Semites. Who are the Semites? Today, the Jews. They're called Semites. Okay, so his name is Shem, but the descendants were called Semites. Abraham, David, and Jesus descended from Shem. Ham's descendants settled in Canaan, Egypt, and the rest of Africa. The land of Canaan that Joshua fought the battle of Jericho, and the rest is history. All of that is the land of Canaan, the grandson of Noah. And he has a curse on him. Well, they all got taken over, didn't they? That's part of the curse. And they're ungodly. They were saying that, some of the commentaries, that it was ungodly for Ham to do what he did, but then he passed that on to his son. His sons passed it on to their sons, and then all of a sudden you have this ungodly race of people. And then when we talk about the Canaanites, they were all ungodly. And Abraham got pulled out of that. He was ungodly, wasn't he? He was called in. That was the land of Babylonia. So anyway, Ham's descendants settled in Canaan, Egypt, and the rest of Africa. Japheth's descendants settled in most of Europe and Asia Minor, or which would be Turkey. So you've got them spread out here, but the line that we're going to follow when it takes all the rest of Genesis is going to follow Shem, who then has, not him directly, but Abraham. And then we get to chapter 12, and all nations, Abraham will be blessed through you because of Jesus. Okay? And that's about 3 chapters away. So we're going to spend our time on the Shemites or the Semites after this to get the lineage, and then follow Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and Joseph. Does that make sense? Because if we do all the other, I'll get confused, then I can't teach it. It's pretty confusing. But it doesn't apply to where we're trying to go with it, okay? Any comments? Let's see. Let me just, two things right quick. When we go over to verse 9, 10:8. Cush was the father of Nimrod, who grew up to be a mighty warrior on the earth. He was a mighty hunter, and like Nimrod, a mighty hunter before the Lord. The first centers of his kingdom were Babylon. So the first warlord, if you will, is Nimrod. We don't know a lot about him. He becomes the first warlord in that part of the country. He started the Assyrian Empire. Then from the Assyrians, who took over? The Babylonians. And so it was the Babylonian Empire after that. And he was from that land in Babylon. So more than likely, the first of the warlords there. And then it says he built Nineveh, which is the capital of Assyria. We all know about Jonah and Nineveh. Okay, so that was over in that area in Iraq, in that area. Okay, and that's where he had his empire. And then Canaan, which is the grandson of Noah, verse 15, and then that's all I'm going to talk, because that's the Canaanites, was the father of Sidon, his firstborn. Okay, remember this list when Joshua was taking over each of the tribes when they got to Canaan? Okay, you got the Hittites, the Jebusites, the Amorites, the Girgashites, the Hivites, and all of those, and the termites, and all of the ites. You got them all. You know, there's just a whole list of them. It's the same list that you see in Joshua when he says, we're going to, I took the baton from Moses, and we're going to take the promised land. It's all of these. So remember, Canaan is going to serve the other two. Here's part of it right here. They're going to serve the other two. You're going to serve the Shemites for sure, because that's where Abraham comes. Okay? So, I think we better, any comments there? And I think we'll go to chapter 11 after that. The rest of it's just the genealogy that doesn't fit into the order of Shem. Is that all right? Okay, next week, we're going to get into Abraham. This is really good stuff. I love doing this one. We'll do 11 and 12, and we won't get through with 12. That is some pretty good stuff. 11 and 12 next week. How's that? Okay? Thank you.